A short foreword to this week's episode, we ran into all kinds of technical difficulties, including connectivity, audio, and software, and we simply couldn't put together the time to do it all over again. So I've tried to work some magic. You have our apologies in advance. Without further ado, enjoy. Welcome everyone to the Three Cynics Gaming Podcast. I'm Clay.
I'm Nate.
I'm Mark.
Today we're going to talk about the struggles of Rainbow Six Siege, the hilarious acts that only Mark Cuban can get away with, and what microtransactions have done for the video game industry. But first up, Ubisoft struggles to keep the Rainbow Six Siege beta running. The original article is from GameSpot. On more than one occasion, it seems Ubisoft had to take down the servers during the beta for, quote, maintenance. And, well, outside of all that, Nate and I have some rather cynical opinions to share about the whole thing. But I think the question I want to ask first is, what good is the information you garner from a beta that begins 4 days before launch and ends the day before launch? Like, how do you think you can act upon whatever it is you're getting out of that? What do you think, Mark Jr.?
No, honestly, I mean, isn't it basically just like the first patch? They like run the beta for 3 days and say, okay, we need to patch X, Y, and Z. So when they do drop the first patch in the first day or the first week or the first month, isn't that all the beta is really for?
Well, ordinarily a beta will run weeks, even months in advance of a game's launch, so that they can actually analyze whatever data they've gotten from it and act upon it. But I'm not sure I'm not sure they give a shit.
I think this was more of a stress test more than an actual beta. And clearly they failed because they had to bring the beta servers down once or twice at least. So I think it was more of a stress test because based on their performance, they probably knew how bad their servers were going to be, and they wanted to see if they could simulate the worst of it.
Probably. Well, that's not so interesting. Moving on. Nate and I played. We shared some time in the Rainbow Six Siege beta, the second beta, and can't help but think I'm jealous of all the people I've seen on Reddit and elsewhere who say it is a welcome diversion from modern shooters, because I found it so incredibly tedious. And the graphics were subpar, but meh, graphics don't mean a whole lot. It was more the gameplay. Like, you spent more time doing nothing than doing something.
It harkened back to like Counter-Strike and games like that where you die and then you wait your next turn. But modern gamers don't have that kind of patience anymore. The Call of Duties of the world have really upped that game, I guess, where you respawn instantly and you get to run right back into combat. And I'm all for, round-based things, but there's better ways to go about it than the way they did it. Because like you said, we spent half of one match doing nothing. Literally nothing. We put up our fortifications, and then nothing happened for 2.5 to 3 minutes. And then we all died in, next 15 seconds?
I know it didn't take me long to die. To help Mark Jr. understand this, I'm not sure what experience you have with this style of gameplay, but essentially every round of Siege, there are no respawns. You are either the military or the insurgents, and you either try, as the insurgents, to set up your defenses to defend whatever it is you're defending, an objective. In the meantime, the military or the police try to investigate what you're doing with their super little spy mobiles and other things like that. So inherently, the first minute of the game is boring, and then the following minute and a half to 2 minutes is nothing as the opposing forces enter the area and try to prepare for the conflict, and then everything happens in a flash, and then you just wait.
Well, I don't know. I played it in Call of Duty 4. Which one? What was it called? I can't remember the mode it was called. What was the game mode where you only had one life? I rather enjoyed it. I don't mind
Seek and
I
destroy.
don't really mind. I don't remember. One of our people can correct us on it. Whatever it was, I didn't mind the gameplay of the one life thing. So it doesn't really bother me to only have one life. It makes you a little bit more cautious, other than the fact that, like you said, you don't do anything for 2.5 minutes. So then by the time you get to do something, you're rushing about because you're like, holy fuck, can I do something?
Yes, but in Rainbow Six Siege, it honestly felt like I was being held hostage by the people who were still alive. There's an objective, you have to plant the bomb, defuse the bomb, whatever the situation was. And I felt that, for more so in the PvE than the PvP, that they would just sit in a corner crouching for 2.5 minutes because they were at low health and they didn't want to come out and die, even though them dying would just let all of us restart the game.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an entirely circumstantial thing. That would depend on, who.
Yes, but it happened every time.
It's true. I can only imagine that a more organized team would have a plan for when others go down. It seems like this style of game, much like Evolve, as a matter of fact, is not suited for pickup groups at all. Because if you don't know the people, or they aren't willing to communicate with you, because Nate and I always have our mics on, then you're you're stuck in limbo, like Nate said, most of the time. I'm fairly certain, Nate, that we spent at least 60% of our time with our hands off our keyboards.
Yeah, it was... I don't know. There was something about the gameplay that, even in Call of Duty, as Mark gave the description, at least in that, you're moving faster, things are happening at a much more rapid pace. It felt like, and this is something you mentioned when we were playing, Clay, that we're bogged down, that we're moving at like 50% speed the whole time. I remember watching you on the death cam pull up a sight to your face, and it took literally like a second and a half to do.
Oh yeah, that red sight. Oh, that was so awful. I didn't want to pull it up for what I might miss in the time it took to get it up.
Yeah, and for anyone who thinks that a second and a half isn't that long of time, bring up any other shooter and try to use your scope. See how long it takes to get to your face. You won't even be able to count to a second.
We had other complaints about it. I mean, other than the fact that not only did it feel like your movement as a character was in slow motion, it really felt like the whole game moved at like 50 or 75% speed. They really slowed everything down. Now, maybe they did it on purpose, because it's really supposed to be a game about... It's like first-person tower defense, really. It's a game of preparation and defense. And I think that is wasted on me, to be honest. I don't think I am a good judge of this game, because I'm like many of the gamers Nate described. I don't have the patience for that shit. I'd much rather run out and die 5 times on Titanfall than wait for one death in Rainbow Six Siege. What about you, Mark Jr.? What do you feel about pace of shooters?
Oh, I think it should be almost as fast as possible, but at the same time, Quake 4? I used to play with Monkey, and he loved it so much. It was so fast-paced, it threw me off. The spinning at 4 jabillion miles per second, so you can literally just tap your joystick to the right and you spin all the way around, drives me crazy. But the faster, the better, and the more action, the better.
Well, this game wanted for a lot, in my opinion. It wasn't just the slow motion, which was a big part of it for me. A lot of gamers are that way now. It was this very subpar graphics. It felt like I was playing a game that was released 6 or 7 years ago. Animations were awful. If you're playing the PvE, the AI knew where you were before you knew where you were. Clay, do you remember when you laid down, because laying down was an option, you could lay down backwards, that your torso made you look like Mr. fucking Fantastic?
Oh yeah. Shameless plug. Everybody who hasn't seen it, go and check out the YouTube channel for our Rainbow Six gameplay, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. In this game, which is the first game I've seen it, they not only let you go prone, they let you go supine, which is to lay on your back. And in doing so, it appears that your torso is about as twice as long as it should be, and your crotch is huge.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome looking.
Man meat everywhere.
It was great. And it's things like that. And the shader technologies that they put in the game, absolutely subpar. In the environments, let me say, the interiors were very pretty. The exteriors, subpar. You could probably count the polygons on a lot of things in the exterior environments. And the character models. Your character from first person mode, what do you see? You see your feet, your calves, your hands, and your weapon.
Yeah.
Well, when most of the time what you're looking at is your hands and your weapon, they need to look the best they can. And in Rainbow Six Siege, everything had this wash. It was like a gradient wash from skin tone to black. And that's Ubisoft, that's not how shadows work.
Yeah, well, this is a classic Ubisoft thing. Like, it told me when I first loaded up the game that my system does not meet minimum requirements. And yet, the entire time we were playing, I was pushing minimum 50 frames per second. So, how the hell does that math work?
Now, just to be clear, this is all just the beta, right? Nobody has the game.
Now, well, game's out now.
Yeah, the game came out Monday, and the beta ended Sunday. So I doubt there were any big changes.
Yeah, it was a finished product at that point.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. No, I was just wondering.
So it's pretty much a finished product at that point. They're not going to make major changes. Maybe, like you said, they're building up towards a patch. But given Ubisoft's track record, I doubt it. They were probably just trying to give as many people a taste of the game as they could, so that hopefully they could build up sales, would be my guess.
Isn't Ubisoft the ones who used to make the awesome Nintendo and Super Nintendo role-playing games?
Some of them, yes.
All right, I was just wondering. I don't play any Ubisoft games, so that should tell you what I think of Ubisoft, right?
Do you enjoy the Assassin's Creed series? Because that's probably their most...
Oh, God, it's horrible.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. It was... Assassin's Creed was... I don't know. All of my friends recommended it to me, and it was just not enjoyable at all.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks.
Don't bother with Rainbow Six Siege. Just save yourself the trouble.
Unless you want another goddamn shooter that there is not already a market full of shooters. But yeah, run with it.
All right, next up, we have another beautiful example of the sell it now, patch it later mantra that has permeated the game-making business for 5 years now, at least. Just Cause 3 suffers terrible frame rate problems on consoles and PC alike. Entire oceans will disappear from your screen. At some points, the physics will divorce itself from the control inputs, and it'll look like the game is moving in slow motion, but your inputs register in real time, and it's a vertigo-inducing nightmare, along with many other glitches. Our reference is an original article from videogamer.com by a man named David Scammell, in which he details the Xbox One reaching lows of 17 frames per second, and in some cases, load times between levels or wherever they happen to be can reach up to 15 minutes. Who the hell is willing to wait 15 minutes for the next playable area to load? I get pissy when I have to wait 2 minutes and I uninstall the game and reinstall it on my SSD.
So I was just thinking the same thing on the Xbox. If that bad boy's like more than a minute, I'm cutting it off. Like, is this bitch frozen?
You've got all the time in the world to fix these things before release, but you're right. It's that make it now, patch it later mentality because they know it's Just Cause. Just Cause is a fairly popular video game series, and they know that at face value, without any extra marketing than they already do, they're going to sell tons of copies because fans of the franchise, are going to buy it. So they don't have to put out a great product right away if they can put out a fucked up one. They'll fix it later.
Yeah, and a second article to reference for the listeners. Let's see, from Ars Technica, a Just Cause 3 review. Steven Strom. Oh, well, we mentioned him last week. Good for him. He calls it, in some cases, unplayably ugly. He calls it, in some cases, quote, the game is often unplayably broken in a number of ways, end quote. And his review was of the PC version. So, and Steven Strom describes how the game has an offline mode, and that some of the problems, the glitches, and the strangeness with the engine will go away so long as you select offline mode. The problem is, as he describes, quote, that relief is short-lived, though, as offline mode only lasts until you pause the game, check your map, or browse upgrades, end quote. So literally, you choose offline mode to alleviate some of the problems that are created by constant connectivity, and as soon as you pause the game, it turns off offline mode. As soon as you check your map, you're reconnecting to the servers. Who makes games this way?
This is something I'd like to talk about after we talk about Just Cause 3. Is like right here in the article, it says, quote, Just Cause 3 is a solely single-player game, but it establishes an automatic connection to Square's Uplay-style servers as soon as you start the game, unquote. Seriously? Why in the hell does a single-player game need any connection to the internet at all? This is Origin all over again. Oh.
Well, doesn't it go back to the point where they said Xbox One had to be online only and then had to backtrack? So now they're just doing it via games rather than via the system?
Yes, that was a misstep on Microsoft's part that has been beaten to death, and people get ever sicker of digital rights management, or DRM as it's often derisively referred to as. But game makers and game publishers feel they must have a tether on their games. They feel they need an inkling of control, otherwise everybody and their grandma, their uncle, their cousin, and their nephew are gonna steal it because everyone's a thief.
What happened to letting my buddy borrow Super Mario Bros. 3?
Because he didn't know. Yeah. Yeah, or NBA Jams. I remember borrowing that from my buddy, NBA Jams. So like,
why is that the end of the world?
Yeah.
If it's a good enough game, he's going to then go out and buy it. And if it's not, well, then you don't deserve another sale.
That's true. Now, who made this game? Was it Square Enix?
Yeah, I believe
Square Enix, and was it sold on Steam exclusively? I didn't get those facts in any of our reference articles.
The developer is Avalanche Studios, and the publisher is Square Enix.
Okay.
And it clearly can't be only exclusively sold on Steam if it's sold on the consoles as well.
I see that now. I see platform and all that. This is going to fluster me, as it flusters me every time. I watched the internet earlier today while I was bruising Reddit lose its fucking mind for the millionth time, of course that's an exaggeration, over a broken game release. How many times do developers have to teach this lesson? Like, seriously, developers and publishers have been making the same bug-ridden bed for years, and everybody keeps laying in it before the fumigation is finished.
I was just about to say, we're doing it to ourselves. If you know that this company has a history of dropping buggy games, why do you rush out and buy it on the day it drops? Why do you do that? Why do you give them your money knowing the game's not 100% complete? So that's just as much on the consumer as it is on the company. Because if the company can put out 3/4 of a game and you're going to buy it anyways, why not put out 3/4 of a game and then just patch it slowly to keep you playing it?
I defy you on one point. This is not on the developers and the publishers. This is entirely on the consumers. Yes, of course, the developers and the publishers are responsible for any product they try to sell. But when consumers constantly reinforce the confidence of a broken game, you're exactly right. Why would you not release it? What does it matter? You can sell 1 million copies whether it plays well or it doesn't.
Well, it's on the developer as well, obviously. It's just it's a digital age problem, because if you went to a store even 30 years ago and saw 2/3 of a chair, you're not buying that chair. But you don't get a chance to actually see everything, because not everybody is a developer, and you can't see the problems that it's going to have. Yes, you can guess, because Square Enix or Ubisoft or whoever has a history of making these problems. I akin it to Black Friday, and whenever anybody complains to me about Black Friday, I tell them, well, we did it to ourselves. Black Friday started because it was the most popular day for people to go start their Christmas shopping. The companies didn't make Black Friday, the consumers did. So until the consumers stand up and stop and just say, I'm not going to buy your broken games anymore, because I'm sure Just Cause is just as fun as its last two incarnations. And if you like those, then you'd probably love this one, if you can play it. But consumers need to stand up and say, I'm not going to pay for your shitty games until you put out completed products.
I think what it comes down to for me is the idea of lessons unlearned or lessons not learned. Both apply, I think. There are, I'm sure, a great many consumers out there who are not nearly as savvy about the history of the gaming industry. They just got their PlayStation and they want to play a game. Or they got their Xbox or PC, whatever it is. They just want to play a game. And that's as far as their involvement with the gaming industry goes. But there's others, and many of them, millions of them, that subscribe to Reddits and other social medias who have heard these things over and over and over in the last 2 years. I mean, there's been more broken releases than you can put together on two hands. So how does anyone have the audacity to buy a game at launch in 2015 and then complain about the state of it? I understand your complaints are valid, and your freedom to express those points is respected, but I reserve the right to invalidate your criticisms by virtue of the lessons you refuse to learn.
Well, I think at this point, it's almost to a point where show me a game that isn't broken upon release.
And isn't that so fucking sad?
It is incredibly sad. But at which point, it's circling right back around to being on the developers. They should do better. And it's up to the consumers, I guess, to make them do better. Because as long as you're buying their products the way they are, they're not going to do better.
I agree. It's like supply and demand. If they're supplying crap and you buy crap, they're going to give you more crap. They're not going to give you some gold bars. They're going to give you poop because you bought the poop last time. Those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. And we are doomed to repeat it.
Oh, okay. We got to pick this conversation up, guys. Nate, what's next up?
Next up is Mark Cuban getting fined $30,000 for dropping the F-bomb at an esports event. I believe it was League of Legends. Okay.
It was.
It was at a League of Legends throwdown over the weekend, I believe last weekend. This is just ridiculous. I don't care about esports. I think they're silly. I mean, I guess I shouldn't, because it's really kind of the redefining of humanity. It ties into that with how it used to be strength was most revered, but now it's intelligence. So I guess I shouldn't have an issue with gamers making money off their craft any more than I do football players, I guess. But this article it's Mark Cuban being Mark Cuban, for lack of a better term. He gets away with these outrageous things, and I guess you could say the fine makes it so he doesn't really get away without these outrageous things. But he does. He's Mark Cuban. It's what you've come to expect from him. If anybody's unfamiliar with him, he owns the Dallas Mavericks, and I want to say some other sports team. This is what he does.
Mhm.
It's his MO.
He's a very
It's
rich
hilarious.
man.
I
And-
love Mark Cuban. He is so willing to tell you how it is that I just love him. There's not people in today's age that are willing to do what Mark Cuban does. This is why he got blocked from buying the Cubs. It's because Major League Baseball's good old boys didn't want him in baseball. I love Mark Cuban. Regardless, I know, granted, he shouldn't be going around dropping F-bombs at a family-friendly event, but it's hilarious, and Mark Cuban is great.
I drop
The
F-bombs
best
at the grocery store all the time.
the best
Me
part
too.
is
I get swatted at by my wife.
Me too.
the best part of this is, one, it was a charity event, and two, his first F-bomb was an accident. He was criticizing Colin Cowherd for not understanding how impactful competitive gaming can be and how popular it is, and he basically related that he gets it because, quote, I'm fucking smart, end quote. And that's awesome. And then later on, during this event, he was told outright that his choice of words violated the rules of the broadcast, and his response was, fuck it.
That's
Which
why
is-
I love Mark Cuban. That's why I love Mark Cuban.
I guess the great part is somebody can get away with it. He's not a bad guy. He's not the bad guy. He's not a person that ordinary people despise for what they do, how they act, or what they say. He seems like he's like the guy who lives just outside the gated community who you didn't know owned the Mavericks, at least in personality.
Yeah, I mean, he does a lot of shit that's uncensored, and that's fantastic. Does he step over the line sometimes? Probably. Is he going to offend people? Certainly. But you know what? The world's a little too, at least America, is a little too politically correct anyway. So it's good to see somebody spit in the face of that. Now, granted, if I had his bank account, I'd probably spit in the face of that a lot more too.
I might wield clout to a despicable degree, yes.
At this point, we'll jump to another article that I found while perusing the internet that is about Pro Evolution Soccer 2016 getting a free-to-play version for PS3 and PS4. I don't much care about Pro Evolution Soccer, to be honest with you. What I got out of it was not that. What I got out of this is I'm going to give a little love to Konami for all the wrong reasons. They're just doing it to make money, but I can't blame them for that. But anyway, it's bringing free-to-play games to the console market. I love free-to-play games because they let me try your product in its entirety and then decide if it's worth my money and my time. And it opens up a world of possibilities that never existed in the console market. In the console market, you pretty much had your $60 games or your pre-owned games, and then if you didn't like them, your recourse was to trade them back into GameStop.
Well, to be fair, you could buy it or you could download the crap-ass 2-minute demo that didn't show you shit.
Yeah, but that's garbage. That's a waste of everybody's time. Because I've never decided I was going to buy a game because I played a demo. But that's one of the reasons that PC gamers have so much choice is because there are so many developers who are trying to get a name for themselves and trying to get started that they put out these free-to-play games. Now, a lot of them are crap. Most of them are crap. But every once in a while you come across a really good one that really catches your eye. We did a feature last week on Dirty Bomb. It's free to play. Now, the way these make money, which is why Konami is doing this, is microtransactions. And I was reading an article here from VentureBeat.com that told me that Crossfire, which is a free-to-play first-person shooter, netted $957 million in 2013 for a free-to-play game. This is letting people choose what they want to spend their money on. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you would never make that on 9 out of every 10 AAA releases. $957 million. And that was, what does it say? That was in 2013, I believe, alone? Yeah, $957 million. Hell, extraordinary titles are proud to make anything close to $1 billion.
Let me throw this one out there, too. Lineage 1 is number 6 on that list for 2013 revenue. Lineage 1 in 2013 made $257 million. Can I just point out that Lineage 1 was put out in 2003?
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of Crossfire. I've never heard of Dungeon Fighter Online. I've never heard of MapleStory. I've never heard of half the games on this top 10 grossing list. The revenue for PC gaming, because these are all PC games, is skyrocketing pretty much by the avenue of free-to-play and their marketplaces.
Mark, I'd love to hear your opinion on this as a console gamer. Are you excited at the possibility of more games being available to you at no cost to yourself?
I mean, well, to be fair, this is why I got Clay to build me a computer, so I would have access to way more video games at a free cost. That way I can decide, well, shit, I put 40 hours into your game. I'm going to kick you $20 and make me feel better about me playing your game for the last 40 hours. So if you deserve my money, then I will give you my money. And that's been my biggest gripe for video games since Xbox, the original Xbox and PlayStation 2, was like you said, you buy a $60 game. If it's crap, you got crap. And you can take it back to GameStop and get $23 for it, something you paid $60 for 3 days ago. The fact that there's a free-to-play game that I can decide whether I want to buy your product or donate money to your product or say, hey, your product was worth my money, so I'll give you my money. So is what that's saying is on these big console games, are the people or the developers scared that console gamers, if they get a free-to-play game, won't give them money for their game? Or are they just saying like, well, you pay $60 for a game or you pay nothing? So this guy got the game, he put 100 hours in the game, and he was like, well, I beat the game. Why am I going to pay him money now? Now, personally, I would pay you money. Yeah. If I enjoyed your game enough to put 100 hours of my personal time into that game, then I would give you money in order to compensate you for what you did. Nobody goes to work for free. This ain't UNICEF. You know what I'm saying?
All right, Joe Dirt.
I know, I love Joe Dirt.
This week's Game Spotlight goes to Tomb Raider. It's my choice, and I choose it because it is an exemplification of why you don't try to sell your game on the very same day as a Fallout release. And it also shows sometimes what a bane exclusivity can be. There are more PlayStation 4s by far in the wild than there are Xbox Ones, and there are far more capable PCs than there are both. And yet, Microsoft keeps buying exclusivity rights, at least temporary rights, to try to sell their consoles on the backs of games that aren't going to sell them. And in particular, on this occasion, on a game whose release could not have had worse timing. You couldn't have picked a worse day in the last 2 years to launch your next, quote, system seller. I can't say either way whether Tomb Raider is a good game or not, because it's getting good reviews and, reviewers enjoy it, and I haven't heard any bitches about it from ordinary gamers either. But what better way to ruin a potentially great game with exclusivity?
And I couldn't agree more. The exclusivity of it may have killed the sales of that game. The release date versus any other game, who cares? That happens constantly. Nobody cares about that. If you're going to buy what you want to buy, and if you want to go back and get Tomb Raider, you want to go back and get Black Ops 3, or, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who bought Black Ops 3 and Fallout 4. So, I don't have a problem with the release date. What I have a problem with is the exclusivity of it, because how much money do they pay the publisher or developer or whoever it is to get those rights? because as a publisher, I would want to reach as many platforms as I could. Basically every platform there is. So why would you limit yourself to such a small number? And when you do PCs and PlayStation 4s, there's a ridiculous number of PlayStation 4s over just the Xbox One. So why would you limit it so much just to one tiny little platform, which is actually the littlest platform in today's market? It just doesn't make sense to me. But those numbers could be huge. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think I don't have any numbers on that, but you can be assured that it's in the tens of millions of dollars. But I don't know if Microsoft's going to see a return on that. They might need a new marketing campaign in the month of December to make people remember that this game exists.
Well, for most instances, it's not only a lump sum of cash that they get immediately. It's also a good working relationship and generally the promise of future cooperation. I think exclusivity is stupid as shit because the days are long gone of someone buying a game system because it has a certain title, with the exception of the Wii, because I own the Wii U for its titles. The Wii U also has its exclusive titles and not much else. So that's a completely different bird in my opinion. But the launch date was dumb. You know, you don't put a small movie out up against the Avengers. You're just dumb. You're begging for ticket sales to be weak. However, I also think the game companies should monitor total sales of games more than they do initial sales. Because if I heard about it and I liked it, but it also came out at the time of Fallout 4 and I only had game for money for one, I'm getting Fallout 4. That doesn't mean I'm not going to buy it next paycheck when I have the money to get it as well.
The best part about this is in a Polygon piece written in August of 2014, the author, Ben Kuchera, proclaimed out loud how this is good business and how exclusives, or this exclusive, might mean more profits for both Microsoft and the makers of Tomb Raider, and how royalty rates will benefit both. But I can't see how that could happen when this game sold 300,000 copies in its launch week. The last Tomb Raider, the reboot in 2013, sold more than 1 million in its launch week, and people got fired for it. I don't see any upside to this unless they relaunch the marketing campaign.
I mean, it's still going to come out on the other platform, is it not?
It is. It'll be out on PC, I believe, in the spring, and this time next year on the PS4.
And wasn't Tomb Raider the original just a PlayStation game?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
No, Tomb Raider started on PC.
Well.
Okay. Well, I'm talking console. Sorry.
It didn't. It never came out on Xbox, if I recall correctly.
You know, I remember playing 1 and 2, and I remember playing both of them on PlayStation or PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, and everybody that knows me knows I went to Xbox as soon as Xbox came out. So I didn't have a PlayStation 2 for very long. You know, I just don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
that kind of stuff flip-flops back and forth all the time. I had a really good example, and it flew out of my brain. But, you know, a lot of, like, Sonic titles. Sonic was owned by Sega. Nintendo was Sega's biggest rival, and now Nintendo owns all of the Sonic stuff, which they've just done an awful job with, but that's a whole other story.
Now, speaking of either jaded or busy or otherwise unavailable gamers, an article from Eurogamer.net claims, quote, EA defends Star Wars Battlefront sales after GameStop claims, quote, it underperformed, end double quote. The news that GameStop's CFO, apparently the COO of GameStop, proclaimed that the game underperformed. And then the CFO of EA, if I can get my facts straight in this oddly written piece by Tom Phillips, he refutes it and says that, quote, Bartel's comments were interesting and a little bit of a surprise to us. From our perspective, I'm here to reaffirm our guidance of 13 million units sold in for the fiscal year. End quote. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, sold in means simply the copies that retailers took from distributors to sell. Sold through is what the customers, the consumers, actually purchased. So they're still expecting to get 13 million copies of Star Wars Battlefront on store shelves. That is a crazy high number. I mean, we're not going to get any numbers. There was a quote, I'd like to find it, from the gentleman who runs Steam Spy. Whomever runs the Steam Spy Twitter wrote, quote, if Star Wars Battlefront was on Steam, it would have been 16th most played, right after Clicker Heroes, end quote. Now, 16th played, according to Steam charts right now, the 16th most played game is H1Z1 with 15,000 players. 15,000 players in launch window is nothing. So I'm guessing that he's insulting them? Because he is the man who created the webpage and application that tracks all the player traffic on Steam. And, oh, no, I'm sorry, my bad. He tracks owners, who purchases what game. He tracks transactions. Now, how he does that, I don't know. But Steam Spy has become a reliable thing. So here we are. On November 28th, he said, quote, it's hard to estimate sales of Battlefront based on CCU, whatever that means, but I'd guess Battlefront sold between 300 and 450,000 on PC, end quote. How he's guessing at this, I don't know. Then again, I don't know that he gets his sales data from Steam legitimately. So maybe he's getting this illegitimately the same way he gets it from Steam.
It's possible. I think this is hilarious and at the same time dumb. I don't know in what context the guy from GameStop said this. It might have just been in a financial meeting type of situation where he was reporting their financials or something along those lines. I don't know if he's necessarily down talking Star Wars Battlefront because it only behooves him if it sells lots of copies. But as a PC gamer, and I don't know if other PC gamers will agree with me, but from my standpoint, GameStop is a completely unnecessary middleman at this point. Their PC gaming sales are abysmal, awful, just awful. Most GameStops don't even have a PC section anymore. They'll order you whatever you like, but you can't go and peruse. And I think this is just going to further separate their relationship that has already been tenuous between game publishers and GameStop, because for a long time GameStop was really the only option after they took over EB Games, and now there are a myriad of options. And I think that GameStop is eventually going to realize that they don't hold the dominance that they once did, and people will go elsewhere.
Isn't GameStop kind of dying anyways? I mean, I don't know, but down here in the Hampton Roads area, I've seen 5, 6, 7 of them close up. So are they dying? Now, don't get me wrong. I am a hard copy kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? I want my disc. Now, I don't need that disc, but I want that disc. So I'm going to buy my game at a GameStop or, well, pretty much just GameStop. I don't really even go anywhere else for video games. So I don't understand why GameStop is all of a sudden getting pissy, other than the fact that maybe they're not making as much money as they thought they would, and they're going to have to close down on their year because they were expecting who knows how many sales, because who knows how many versions or not versions, copies they bought. And, they put that money out front, don't they? So you put out $100 million for X state in California or whatever, and you've only made back $22 million. Well, that's a little scary.
I found a very interesting article on Fortune.com by John Kell, who says that GameStop stocks are down 14%. The stock slid more than 17% on Monday morning, which was November 23rd as of this article. Well, Third quarter, same-store sales slid 1.1%, while overall net sales dropped 3.6%. New hardware sales were hit especially hard during the quarter, slumping 20%, while new software sales dropped 9.3%. In a press release, CEO Paul Raines blamed lower than expected new software and hardware sales and delays in the company's technology brand store openings, a segment that includes Simply Mac and Spring Mobile stores. I think that GameStop is starting to suffer. Well, I don't know, continuing to suffer from these other outlets. And Mark, you might go to GameStop, but you can also go to Target and Walmart and Best Buy and a million small stores. And that's just, what do you call them, Clay? Micro stores or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I have a thing. I have a problem with the idea of places like GameStop going away. I think you need those middlemen to even out the market. Once you get down to digital distribution, who are your middlemen? Green Man Gaming, Steam,
good old games.
Good old games. All of those places compete with one another to keep gaming prices competitive. It's no different in the physical world. Having places like GameStop, Walmart, Target, Best Buy, the more of them, the better to keep the prices low. The problem GameStop, I think, has is diversification. They just don't understand it. They might be a couple of years too far behind to make up enough with diversification. I mean, they started selling, cell phones in my local GameStop last year. Who the fuck is going to buy a cell phone from the GameStop? I don't think they understand what they're doing any longer. The market is slipping out from under them, and all that's left is the used games market. And now that Best Buy and Walmart are getting into that, they're only going to slip harder.
Well, I agree that having GameStop and places like that around are fantastic. It's good. It doesn't do me any good as a PC gamer unless I want to go get a Wii U game, which I know all the release dates well ahead of time, and I just order them from Amazon. But prices, are not low, Clay. I don't know why I said A in there, but prices are not low. But I know what you mean. I just think that GameStop itself is suffering the wrath of its own dominance.
I think it's suffering for an unwillingness to change, to adapt to the market. They came in to the digital world late. Either way, I played the Battlefront beta. Looks like fun, and it's a beautiful game, and it plays well. As we said last week, it just seems a very shallow experience, and maybe one that's not exactly worth $60, and maybe others feel the same way, and maybe that's why they've suffered. Or maybe it's just a GameStop thing. Who knows? But we've reached the end of our time, so gentlemen, tell the listeners where they can find all of our stuff.
Be sure to find us on Facebook and Twitter, and be sure to follow us. Stay up to date on everything that we do.
Don't forget to look for audio versions of the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast app.
And be sure to check the YouTube channel every day for the latest podcast and gameplay videos. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one, folks.
Mark, why you gotta be so awkward about that?
So, what do you want me to say? I know
that's not
I'm going to say
Mark,
one.
Mark.
You want me to say one?
Mark, but you didn't say bye. You said bye.
Bye. Yeah, bye.
It was so dead.
Mark bot.
Oh, no, it wasn't dead. Listen to it again. It's more like fuck you. No, I don't know why I do it like that, but it was more fuck you.
Oh, this might go into the podcast
I
too.
can say one. One in there.
Oh,
that's what I leave with every
that's
time.
all, folks. Oh, goodness.